Can y'all hear me?
Yes. What was that?
This Labor Day, save $300 on Eargo 5. Call or go online now for this limited time offer. We're here and ready to help you with your
I can't hear you.
free remote hearing checks and consultations by our licensed hearing professionals.
Who's that talking? Diane?
Retired federal employee, you may qualify to get Eargo at no cost to you.
Uh-oh.
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
I think somebody might have a TV running in the background is what it sounds like.
I hear somebody's radio or something.
Or oh, maybe it's a radio.
Good evening, everybody. Can everybody hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, good, good. Just checking.
Everyone, the meeting is live streaming now, just so you know.
John, I heard recording stopped.
That was
Did you
it.
hear that as well?
Yeah, I did not start that recording. Ours just goes to stream. I think somebody may have hit the button.
I think I see Uchi came on, but she came on as attendee instead of panelist.
She's switching now.
Okay. There she goes. There she is.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
So,
Tracy, are you up and running properly?
Tracy. She's not hearing.
Followed by pound.
I can text her.
looks like she's frozen.
Yeah.
Enter your participant ID followed by pound. Otherwise, just press pound to continue. You have joined the meeting as an attendee and will be muted throughout the meeting.
Hey, Cindy.
You were frozen. We're trying to see if you can hear us.
I can't hear anything, and I've never had any problem joining a Zoom meeting. I don't know what's going on.
No, we can hear you now.
Okay, well, I dialed in because I couldn't get any,
Okay.
oh, disconnected. Can you hear
You're
me?
there. You're here. Oh. Uh-oh. Okay, Dawn's there. So Diane, we have enough people to start.
Okay, let's start.
And Tracy's the alternate, so do we need to use Tracy as the alternate?
Yes.
Kate is
Okay.
coming in.
Who? Kate? Okay,
Kate Collier's there.
yep, I see her. Okay, so we'll start the September 1st, 2020 Planning Commission meeting call. We'll call it to order. Roll call, please.
Followed by pound.
Cindy Olson,
Here.
Kate Collier,
Here.
Nick Howard,
You have not entered any
John
numbers.
Reimer,
Please re-enter your meeting ID followed by pound.
Uh-oh, somebody's,
John Reimer. Unmute.
You have not entered any numbers. Please re-enter your meeting ID followed by pound.
Ursula Cruzaligi.
Here.
Jordan Hudson. Tracy Stokes.
Tracy?
I know she's here, so
Yep, okay. Okay, approval of the minutes, August 4th, 2020. Can I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the minutes from August 2020. I'm sorry. August 4th, 2021.
Second, somebody?
I will second that.
Enter your meeting ID
Okay,
followed by
all in
pound.
favor, aye. If the
I,
say no. Okay, it passes. Actually,
Enter your
there was
participant.
one correction on the agenda. It says Planning Commission work session under the date there.
got it.
Yeah, I don't know if that matters. Okay, now, this date, September 1st, 2021, the regular meeting of the Idaho Springs Planning Commission will open for a public meeting for the plan development, rezoning, preliminary plat, and plan for the mixed-use development at Block 57, the / former Gold Digger Field and Bus Barn. The public meeting opens at, what time is it? 6:04. And we'll start with the staff report, Jared.
All right, thank you very much. John, I believe the person in the attendee item that's called in may be Tracy. So just wanted you to be aware of that. So thank you very much, Commission. Before you this evening is a plan development, rezoning, and preliminary plat and plan for mixed-use developments at the Block 57, or formerly known as Gold Digger Field location, and the Bus Barn. So I'm going to try to share my screen here. I think I have the opposite. Okay. So the review process, first of all, there are two, this is proposed to be a two-step process. Step one, which is what we're currently reviewing, what's being proposed before you this evening, is the rezoning to a plan development of the property in question, which I'll go over here in a little bit, and a corresponding PD plan, and then a preliminary plat and plan, which is a step in the subdivision process. So pending the approval of step one through a recommendation from the Planning Commission and then to the City Council, the developer would then work towards step two, which would be a future request, and that would be a final development plan, and then the final plats, which is the last step in the subdivision process. The final development plan would be basically something that complies with what we're working on this evening, the PD. So the PD is really the framework for this proposed development. A PD is a mechanism, a zoning mechanism in which the petitioner can request kind of to look that the city look at a plan as a whole and request deviations. And in return, the city can grant those deviations, but can also request higher levels of design, landscaping, things of that nature. So it's a little bit more of a fluid process that we're working with here this evening. But there are still findings of fact, and we'll go through those here in a little bit. Excuse me. Project overview. So I did provide one of the images from the plan sets here, kind of as a top-down view. The petitioner is requesting through this plan development a maximum of 120 residential units spread throughout 3 buildings. The number of buildings isn't really restricted. That's more for context here. A maximum of 12,000 square feet of commercial space, a park site, which is down in the lower right-hand corner, referred to as Area 2. The site has been split into 2 areas, Area 1, which is the development area, and then Area 2, which is the park site. Reconstruction of Minor Street along the north end of Area 1 there. So right now, Minor Street is a pretty narrow street that sometimes has parking on the north side. The petitioner is proposing to abide by the city's standards, streetscape standards, regarding reconstructing that portion of Minor Street. So there would be, it's proposed to have parallel parking on both sides of the street. And then reconfiguration of the south side of Idaho Street next to the proposed park at Area 2. So this would be a reconfiguration in parking from its current parallel spaces to a different configuration. Comprehensive plan and zoning. So this is the location on the comprehensive plan of the site. It is found within the exit 240 gateway area and is regional commercial as a designation. The comprehensive plan expands upon this, however, and discusses a mix of uses, including hotels, multifamily residential, office, and the possibility of mountain adventure center. So the comprehensive plan area that we're talking about is north and south of I-70, to put that into context of that quote. Surrounding comprehensive plan area is shown as transitional mixed use. The zoning, current zoning, most of the area is indicated as P for park and recreation. And then there's also some C2 where the bus barn is. So the proposed zoning, though, would be planned development, which would allow for this plan to move forward, allow for the park site to be located here, and then the commercial and residential developments to be in this other area. Subdivision regulations and land donation. The subdivision ordinance talks about land to be dedicated. So there are several requirements, and staff is proposing to utilize 2 of those requirements, 8% of the site to be utilized exclusively for unimproved open space. Well, what does that mean exactly? In this case, the petitioner is proposing that to be fulfilled by dedication of a portion of Minor Street, or what would become Minor Street, that is currently owned by the property owner, which is the school district. 10% of the site to be utilized as unimproved public open space, which we're proposing that to be a deed restricted park site, or as I referenced earlier, Area 2. Impact fee, there is a transportation impact fee based on additional residential units. The petitioner has proposed that impact fee be utilized for the reconstruction of Minor Street, and staff is amenable to allowing that to be offset and used for that community benefit construction of a transportation improvement. Proposed land uses and staff response. Area 1, so there are a number of proposed uses by the petitioner. The petitioner, I apologize, I didn't go over this earlier, is 4 points. And the owner of the property, as I mentioned, is the school district. So the petitioner has proposed these requested items, commercial uses per C2, for the C2 section of the code, pop-up kiosks, booths, and trucks occupying space, home occupation, live workspaces, a maximum of 120 multifamily residential units, some lumber, potential for lumber storage, and that storage to be screened, communication towers, rooftop solar arrays, and then they are requesting a prohibition on automotive service stations. Staff took a look at these uses and did have a number of recommendations. Staff recommends adding language to both the pop-up kiosk, booths, and trucks use category and the home occupation uses, that they remain subject to all other applicable permits, licenses, and approvals. For example, a mobile vendor may still need to obtain a city peddler's permit, depending on the proposed location, and a food truck may still require county health and safety permits and approvals. So I was requesting additional information regarding the text of home occupation uses being proposed as they are currently allowed under certain restrictions in the municipal code. Additionally, the term property administrator needs to be defined. Mobile telecommunication facilities are largely subject to federal regulations. So we're actually asking for those to be removed because it's something that the city can't really regulate anyway. And staff is recommending those changes to that use category, or to those uses. The second area, area 2, the park site, the petitioner is requesting that the following uses be allowed. Open space containing uses allowed in the park and recreation section of the code, pop-up kiosk booths, trucks occupying space, sales and rental of recreational material, communication towers mounted on appropriate street furniture. In a similar fashion, staff is requesting that language be added to pop-up kiosk booths, truck uses, because of those additional licenses, permits, et cetera, that we currently require. Is staff's opinion that the park in area 2 must operate similarly to any other public park found in the city, to fulfill the intent of the park land dedication requirement of the state code, and therefore staff is recommending that this area be deed restricted to ensure that it can be used for public purposes. Staff has also recommended the removal of the telecommunication portion of this of these uses here as well, just once again because federal guidelines restrict what exactly the city can regulate regarding those telecommunication towers. Zoning standards, lot size. The planned unit development allows for or requires a minimum of 1 acre to be applied for. There's about 3 3/4 acres of property here being consolidated and on this proposed development. Density. So the proposed use would have a density of approximately 36 units per acre. There's really no true density calculation within the ordinance, but there are in other locations minimum densities for residential districts. So the smallest of which would be 400 square feet. And the proposed density is more than double that of 400 square feet. It's around 1,000 square feet per unit. Lot coverage. So the petitioner has included within the PD lot coverage restriction, or building, I should say, building coverage restrictions of they intend to cover no more than 50% of the area of area 1 with buildings, and then 10% of area 2 with buildings. There's also an open space requirement, and staff has looked at those requirements and believes that per the C2 restrictions, that 15% is something that would be feasible. When I say lot coverage and open space, what I'm referring to is the portion of area 1 that would have to be either greenscape, landscaping, xeroscape, something besides pavement and buildings. And the petitioner has indicated that they intend to meet that 15% requirement by utilizing the additional or the overage in area that they're dedicating to Minor Street and restricting on area 2. And then the rest of that would be made up of the landscaped areas around the buildings, the detention basin, the parking islands, etc. Setbacks, petitioner has indicated varying degrees of setbacks. The place I want to highlight this evening is along Minor Street. The petitioner is proposing a 3-foot setback along Minor Street. It's staff's opinion that a minimum of a 5-foot setback would better serve that area. It would allow for larger stoops if there's access to those building 1 and 2 from Minor Street. It would also allow for a larger landscaped area and the potential for gas meters, electric meters, utilities, things of that nature to be located in that area as well that would be associated with the buildings. The couple other items that I want to look at. So staff has, or the petitioner has indicated a encroachment into the setback in a number of locations. One of them is this drive aisle here. The petitioner has indicated that they would like to have parking encroach into all setbacks, and staff is amenable to parking encroaching into the setbacks. However, has indicated, and I'll cover this in the landscape section, that a minimum landscape area, a perimeter landscape area, be included in the regulations so that they would still have to have a minimum of landscaping, with the exception of a couple locations. One would be here just south of building 1, and the other would be to the east, or excuse me, 3 locations to the east of building 2, and lastly to the north of building 3. This area here has been indicated as their primary entrance. So I'll cover access now, I guess, as good a time as any, but this is their primary access point off of Idaho Street that would just proceed straight into the site. A secondary access point would be here onto Minor Street, and there's been some contemplation of having a row of parking in front of building 3, and then an entrance and a row of parking next to building 2 here. The petitioners also indicated a couple locations where they would either encroach into the setback, say building 3 be allowed to encroach up to a certain percentage of the setback, or up here on building 1 and 2, a portion of those buildings are proposed to be set back even further. Maximum building heights, this excerpt from the PD is an excerpt related to the building height. So this is Minor Street, and I know that the petitioner is going to go through this in greater detail, but this is Minor Street here, and the frontage of buildings 1 and 2, the 2 that face Minor Street, are indicated to be 2 stories tall in the front, and then abide by the city's current code when it in regards to building height, which is 35 feet. So, and that 35 feet is not from the pinnacle of the roof. It's halfway in between the pinnacle of the roof and the bottom of the eave here. So the frontage of this building would be 2 stories, is proposed. Well, then the site drops significantly, the grade changes, and the rear of the building would be 3 stories. There's also, and I think the petitioner will talk about this a little bit more, but they're proposing a setback then to allow for greater height behind 35 feet from Minor Street. And that's indicated here with this other portion of building 2 being higher. So the backside of building 1 and most of 2 would be 3 stories. There's this small L shape that they're proposing would be 4 stories and no taller than 46 feet from the grade of Minor Street. Building 3, which also steps down even further, is proposed to be much closer in height to that of the L portion or the southeast portion of building 2. Lot coverage, building design standards. The petitioner has indicated that they intend to abide by the building design standards with the exception of a couple of deviations. And those deviations are to the building length, the maximum building length, which was 150 feet, and they're proposing that it be up to 100 or 210 feet. And then also the breakup in the facade of a building from 30 feet in that breakup to 50 feet. And staff is amenable to that to that deviation. Landscaping, as I mentioned, staff had a few comments in regards to landscaping. The primary one, though, was having a perimeter landscaping around the site. And then lighting, the petitioner is proposing lighting that has a dark skies component and is maximum of 25 feet tall, more of a pedestrian scale, and has cutoffs, etc., with a maximum spillage into neighboring properties as well, included in that regulation. Property to be vacated and dedicated. There's a number of pieces of this site that are either right-of-way, such as this number 1 here. So that's city right-of-way. That would be, we're working with the petitioner as to exactly how to convey these sites to, this is actually right-of-way off of 11th Street, but it is currently not used as right-of-way. It's actually a part of the bus barn property, and it's city right-of-way, but it's utilized as part of the bus barn property currently. So the city would work with the petitioner on vacating that. This section here is the portion of Minor Street that is owned by the school district, and the petitioner is proposing to dedicate that to the city and then reconstruct Minor Street here. The same or is similar here with the expansion of Idaho Street. There's a small little parcel in this vicinity as well that's owned by the city that would be vacated. And then this is the deed restricted park site. Access and traffic study. Access, as I mentioned, is on Minor Street and Idaho Street. This would still be the primary access into the site. The traffic study was prepared and submitted to the city. The city engaged with a third-party traffic engineer to review that. Their comments came out earlier today, and there were a couple of items that they brought up that were something that we feel needs further discussion with the petitioner. And I'll talk about that in my recommendation, but primarily in regards to 13th and Idaho Street. Findings of fact, the rezoning. So typically we go through each one of the findings of fact line by line. Since there's basically 4 sections of findings of fact, because there are so many requests in this, I took the approach of looking at these in a more holistic fashion and then excuse me, commenting holistically on them. So in regards to the rezoning, it's staff's opinion that the proposed development contains these elements with the recommended additional conditions that staff has discussed in the report. In regards to the PD, there are 2 items. The first one, staff is proposing based on the findings of the traffic report that it is a bit challenging at this point in time to fully agree with number 1 here, which states whether the proposed PD adequately mitigates any adverse impacts it causes, including without limitation, adverse impacts on traffic, view corridors, noise, property values, and provisions of public services. And it's this impacts on traffic that we are going to be requesting additional information on. And then number 2, whether deviations from the requirement of the underlying zone district are warranted by virtue of the improved design or amenities provided in the PD. It's staff's opinion that the provisions in the PD will create an attractive and innovative use of land that is in keeping with the intent of the PD code. The addition of the proposed park site will provide amenities to the community at large and fulfill the amenity component of the PD code. Then we have findings of fact regarding the preliminary subdivision Platen plan. So once again, I took these more holistically. It's staff's opinion that the proposed PD complies with the standards for approval. Standard number 2 is enforced to a different standard when the property is requesting a PED process and zoning. The PD allows for deviations to the zoning regulations as previously discussed. Prior to getting into recommendations, I realized I skipped over parking. The petitioner intends to park this site per code. So, the code talks about a number of parking spaces per unit type. So an efficiency unit or a studio apartment would have a certain standard, a 1-bedroom unit would have a separate standard, and so on and so forth. The petitioner has provided a sample mix. Now, remember this PD is a framework. It's not a final development plan. So staff did calculate the number of spaces required per that proposed mix and came up with 244 spaces. However, or excuse me, 222 spaces, apologize. However, the code also, because it's a mixed-use development, allows for a reduction in parking on a factor level. So this site had a 1.2 factor reduction available to it because of the nature of the commercial and residential components. However, staff worked with the petitioner and expressed some concerns, especially regarding the 4 units. The 4 units having only 2.5 parking spaces required of them, and the 4-bedroom unit, excuse me, and also the fact that the CCMRD, some of their parking when they were originally constructed and approved was located behind the bus barn and is being removed per this plan. So this would allow for a lower reduction factor from 1.2 to 1.1. Actually provides 22 more spaces than would be required per code, and which would go a ways towards assisting the CCRMD with their parking requirements. At this point, our recommendation would be to continue the request to the next meeting and requesting additional information from the petitioner regarding the traffic impacts outlined in the letter from the city's consulting traffic engineer. The past recommendation was for approval with conditions. I've outlined those conditions in the reports and discussed them this evening. With that, Chair, I would like to invite the petitioner to speak with your permission.
Yep, let's hear from the applicant. Thank you, Jared.
Can I share my screen?
Thank you, Carla. As Carla gets screen sharing capabilities, I'd like to take a minute to introduce myself to those of you that I may not know. My name is Kelly Flanagan. I am a Idaho Springs native, and so an invested community member. I also serve on the Board of Education for District C, which represents Idaho Springs. And so I'm here in a couple of different capacities, but really most importantly as a co-applicant for this request to rezone. I think another thing I'd like to mention is just a little bit of information about me and why I'm here speaking on behalf of the school district today. I serve in my day job as the Director of Community Relations for Public Service Company of Colorado, otherwise known as Xcel Energy. I represent all of our community engagement across the state. I have a lot of experience in community and economic development, including serving as the first woman chair of the Economic Development Council of Colorado. I'm really invested in this project for a lot of different reasons, but I wanted to mention some of my credential because I do think that I have a unique balance of looking at both the historic nature of our community and where we've come from, and then looking at it from an economic development lens of where we want to go. I am here, and Carla, I don't know if you want to click through some of these slides as we go ahead, but here you can see really us representing a co-applicant for this request to move forward with a zoning change to a planned development. We think this is important for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, this helps us to monetize the district property here at Digger Field, helping us to sell that land. And then not only that, but then looking at it in a bigger picture, really that provided that additional revenues from a tax base, both to the city of Idaho Springs and Clear Creek County. I also believe that as we look through with this and we think about the development and moving to a planned development, in my view, professional view, this is what is going to assist all of us working together to advance thoughtful and sustainable development in our community and facilitating our overarching community needs to provide some open space and play spaces for our kiddos, as well as to address what we all know is a housing challenge in this community and in this county. I'd also add that really, as we think about this project and we think about our ability to move forward with something like this, we believe that it is really a key piece to our ability as the school board to really develop and foster and keep ongoing strategic community partnerships, both with the city of Idaho Springs, with the Clear Creek Recreation District, and really with the community at a whole. And so I wanted to just take a few minutes to introduce myself, representing a co-applicant at the school district and really encouraging the Planning Commission and ultimately the City Council to move forward and approve a change in zoning to really this planned development. I think when you hear from Stephanie Copeland and 4 Points Funding, you'll really see some of these really key elements that we felt at the school board level were really important moving forward. But I also want to separate for just a minute and say that in our view as the school board, this zoning change is really key to our ability to move forward hard stop. So with that, I would like to turn it over and introduce to you Stephanie Copeland if you have not met her yet. Thank you.
Kelly, thanks very much. Carla, can you move to the next slide just to give a bit of information? I've spoken to some of you prior. We are a community-focused, place-based investment fund. We're only investing in the rural markets in Colorado. We're targeting the need of this missing middle income that's non-subsidized or income limited, but also is not trying to chase market rents up. We have projects in about 6 communities underway today around the western slope, some of eastern Colorado, some that are mostly in multifamily housing, but also in creating destination for the state. I previously ran economic development for the state of Colorado. And when Idaho Springs and other communities were designated as opportunity zones, I found it really important to catalyze that designation to bring in mutually and community beneficial investments. That said, the city has been a great partner to us in trying to work through this process. This is a complex process and we understand that. And we are we're very humbled to be here and hopefully working together to try to do something great. Can you go to the next slide, Carla? What we're seeing in many of our mountain and western slope communities is that population migration is continuing to rise, and we're seeing, the thesis of population growth in Colorado is indirectly and subsequently kind of impacting the rest of the state now as well. And we think that making sure that communities can both sustain or allow for moderate growth and moderate development to occur, they also have to ensure that who they are isn't lost in that process. And we think that's a really big component to this. And we don't think that is a zero-sum game, meaning we think that if we build things and we provide what communities want and like, it will de-risk our investment. So we see that as almost a selfish need for us, but also we do recognize Idaho Springs as a community that feels very pioneering, very innovative, and has a really strong legacy, both to the property that we're looking at as well as its roots in mining. Today, we're requesting a changing in zoning, which again is the first step in this two-step process that Jared talked about. It would facilitate the plan that we've put together, but we think it's appropriate for the field, if Idaho Springs is to enable, population growth at all parts of the age continuum, we're focused on kind of workforce, middle income, renters. And this site is an ideal site. It's a flat site. It is sitting off a major corridor. So traffic, we think, will not put more stress on the downtown area of the city, which is really important. We also, again, like that it will eventually be part of a transit hub. And the bus barn sitting where it is, we thought that was an ideal location to give back to the city to provide an open space for the rec district to kind of expand its programming and to facilitate public use on our dime, which we think is an important part of the overall development. Our residents will benefit from that for sure. It will de-risk our property by doing this, but we also think it's of mutual benefit to the community. The community is also highly walkable. Again, bringing residents in that can then walk to the places in Idaho Springs that provide the backbone and the economic driver of the community, we think is also really important. And so we've just mapped the walkability. We've mapped shade on the street. We've mapped everything that we could to make sure that if we were to develop something here, it is appropriately set back, it's appropriately covering the site in a way that provides the necessary capacity, but also the use. It puts parked to that will hopefully not put any more pressure on the already high pressure parking situation in the community, but also provides potentially some synergistic uses, and that we're designing it in a way that feels additive to the residents of Minor Street that I'm mostly concerned about, making sure that we look at their shade, their shading and their site views, as well as hoping to cover some of the sound coming from the highway. So we think we are concerned about this. We are 10+ year owners of these developments. We are not a developer that comes in, builds it, stabilizes it, and flips it. We own these for at least 10 years, if not more. And this proposing for rezoning, we've talked about this already with Jared. We are asking for this to be considered as part of the rezone process. And then we would go forward, if that were approved, with a final plan development, which would have to adhere to this rezoning. So let me turn it over now to Carla Cole, who's been working with us on the local development, and who we've been working with for some time, even prior to this project, in a little bit more specifics about the project.
Are you guys able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I can't find my sound. All right, so just to remind everybody what we're talking about here, it's 120 residential units on the site, up to 120, up to 12,000 square feet of general retail, 3/4 of an acre of multi-use park and open space. And you'll see those calculations sort of broken out in the PD. I also have them later in this conversation. We are providing approximately 16,000 square feet of right-of-way conveyed back to the city, or conveyed to the city, to widen both Idaho Street and Minor Street. As you know, today, Minor Street is narrowed down towards the west end of town there, west end of the site. And then to meet our parking regulations and even a little bit more as we can, approximately 200 parking spaces. And this is a fully funded project. So I am Carla Pogrifka-Cole. A lot of you know me. I live up 103. I've been here for a long time. And I'm a member of our community. I'm an architect and designer, and working with 4 Points on the pre-development and the entitlement portion of this project so far. So this is our site plan today. So you can see so we're proposing buildings up against Minor Street to make that edge of Minor, to make a continuation down Minor Street from historic downtown, and really give Minor Street west of historic downtown a presence. So we'd be widening the street here and then providing green space along that as we can, as well as green space in between. The space in between the buildings would allow for light and air to the residents that are directly across and in that area. It's really the most impacted by the view shed there. And then we would be doing green space. There'll be more green space and more trees along this whole buffered edge, really throughout the site and within the parking stalls. But these zones that I'm pointing out here are really the larger areas of green space, and possibly a dog park somewhere next to the building here or behind building number 3. So we've got building number 1, building number 2, and building number 3. Again, today is just for rezoning. So what you're really allowing here is 50% of this area 1 to be developed within the setback areas. What 4 Points is proposing are these buildings along the street edge to create that edge, and then also to allow for retail. So this building here would be partially residential, partially retail on this in this building number 3. And then the third large green space would be a park, more specifically a park directly across from the rec center, and in programming with the rec center. And I believe we have Cameron Marlin, our director, who will give a public comment sort of about how she's been working with us on programming that space, and how we'll continue to work together to create a space that is good for the city, the rec center, and for the 4 Points community as well. So just a reminder on the process and the schedule so far. We've been working really hard over the last 6 to 8 months, really, to go through community meetings and stakeholder discussions to understand what is important to everyone and the community involved and the neighbors involved. And today, in September 1st, we're going through the zoning approval, preliminary plat, and the plan development, basically, which is our zoning. And we're foreseeing that we will.
Uh-oh.
We lost you.
We lost Carla. Shoot.
Oh, no. Are you going to try and call her, Stephanie?
Yeah, I'm just trying to text her right now. Sorry. And she has, I'm so sorry, Commission, she has the slides, so I can't even go on without her. Try to call her.
We're good. We can wait.
Okay, thank you. I apologize for this. Okay, thank you. Okay, she's reconnecting. Thanks, Carla. She is reconnecting and I apologize. I think the gist of
okay.
that slide was we're going through this process now and we are navigating, making sure that we have the questions answered specifically around parking with Jared and team, and that we are continuing to progress. We're in the middle of a city council review. So a little bit of a needle to thread there, but I don't have her next slide, so I cannot go on from there. I'm sorry. But Jared or commissioners, I would leave it, if you have, in the meantime, if we should open the floor for questions, I think that we could do that while we're waiting for Carla, if there's anything else.
Well, after you guys are done, we'll go to public comment.
Oh, got it. So sorry. Okay.
This question. No, that's fine.
Stephanie, if I may, and Chair, if I may make a suggestion, if you had other staff, or I call them staff, I apologize, other people who wish to speak in regards to the project itself, to continue your presentation, now may be an opportune time for that.
We don't. We had Kelly on earlier as a co-applicant, and myself and Carla, and I think we need to be investing in broadband as well as housing. So I am sorry.
Okay, well, it appears that Carla's back.
Okay, great.
Yep, she's there.
Did you make it back, Carla?
Can you
Okay.
hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry. Hang on. Reconnecting my screen. Okay. Can you see the screen now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so then construction documentation would begin in January, and then construction start, we'd be looking at a May start, hopefully in 2022. All right, what are the next steps to the zoning approval? So assuming we are approved for our zoning, then we would go forth with the market feasibility study, a housing feasibility study, design and further stakeholder input as necessary, specifically for the park space, and then submission of the final development plan, of course, which you would then see again. So today is really about our change of zoning. So in looking at the zoning and subdivision regulations, you know, we're looking at restricting uses, restricting density, restricting certain conditions, and really how we cluster our developments and where these developments are appropriate in our city. So again, subdivision and final development will happen at a later date. Tonight, you know, we're really talking about the rezoning and the PD. And so the difference is that at a final subdivision, you'll see a real site plan with all the civil engineered pieces. And right now, you'll see in our documentation, we've got the concepts and we understand what will be needed from a due diligence standpoint and how we propose to begin that. Tonight, you'll see the concept plan and for the rezoning. So you'll get your fully engineered drawings at final development. We're required community meetings at final development. We've done at least 4 community meetings and multiple stakeholder meetings throughout the community leading up to this to really hopefully set the project up for success so that it really is, when it's said and done, is what the people want in their neighborhood, in their city. And then we've got elevations tonight that will talk about how the building height is addressed, and we've got some renderings that are proposed, but really this is about the rezoning. So this could be for any developer going forward, not just 4 Points, but we can tell you how 4 Points proposes to proceed with the project. So why rezone to a PD? The rezoning to a PD allows us to identify how many units are appropriate for this site, as opposed to saying a C2 zoning, and C2 would pack in as many as C2 zoning would allow. The PD allows us to sort of restrict what those are. So we're looking at closer to 100 units, but really the zoning we're proposing tonight is 120. So that's a mistype. But you know, the other thing is that going in with a PD allows us to tailor how the building heights and how the site lays out, how much building coverage there is, which you heard Jared earlier say that there's currently not a density involved with the C2 zoning in the code. And we're actually proposing that it be restricted. So whether it's 4 Points as the developer or any developer coming forward on this property would be restricted to 50% of building coverage within that zone area 1. The building heights, you can see this is our initial shading study. This is worst case scenario, shade of the winter solstice at 9 a.m. So worst case, it's just barely hitting the front of the foremost residence. There is really what we're aiming for right now. And then really this other area that's of big concern are these units that are these homes that are very close to the property line as it sits today, along the central alley, which is that piece that goes through here that you saw in Jared's exhibits we're requesting a vacation of. But the zoning would allow us to pull back some of the building mass in this corner and in this area along here to help not shade these homes for the majority, if not all of the year there. And the PD zoning allows us to do that. It allows us to create these regulations that either restrict or allow for certain things. So some of the deviations we are asking for, and this sort of piggybacks on what Jared had said, is for the building height, we are asking for an addition of a zone lot line, and I'll show you that on plan. The zone lot line then restricts things within a certain distance of Minor Street so that they cannot be higher than that. But it also allows for us to address the change in grade on the site. Building coverage, we're actually adding that to the code. There is no regulation under C2. The building massing and articulation, again, we're asking for 210 feet. This is really to allow us to get the frontage on Minor Street that we want, but also accommodate the program to balance the performa. And then, and this to us, this is really, you know, if you look at this against what historic minor is approximately 250 feet of linear. So if you look along Minor Street, the block is approximately 35 feet building height all along that. And so this is slightly less than that. And then the access road, we're actually looking at, there's something in the code that talks about the access road offsets, which would be 2 feet along the I-70 in lieu of the 7 feet, which is in the code. And that's really just to get us more parking in that back area, essentially. And then I-70 has, CDOT has a buffer zone in there right now, right away buffer zone. And then the setbacks, as Jared had indicated, we are asking for a 3-foot setback at Minor Street. And this is important in order to give us efficient residential units within the building, as well as the parking as it fits on the site, as we expect it to fit on site. So I know this is one area where we are a little bit at odds with planning. We are able to accept all the uses and talk about the uses that he wants to add regulations to or conditions to. The 5 foot is a bit of a heartache for us. We feel that widening Minor Street to the 50-foot plus gives us a setback from those homes, but definitely something to talk about. And then we are proposing along Idaho Street, a 10-foot setback, and then along the I-70 and the central alley there, the I-70 really is the 20-foot setback. So we'll look at that in plan. And then really look at all of these in plan. And then open space, that did not get updated, so I'm going to skip through that. And then the community meetings. So we did have 5 community meetings there. The first one was about all of exit 240, but this project is really just about the north side of I-70 there. So that's where these last 4 meetings came into session. We really looked at what the site was in the past, really looking at the history of the site and the town and where we are today. So obviously here's the site today. In those community meetings, we learned and grew our community benefits list to include, housing, and 4 points targets the median income. It's important that we have safe, well-maintained, handicap accessible units for our residents in Idaho Springs, to be a year-round access to a multi-use space by the rec center there for all ages and abilities, not limiting anyone there. And then honor the former football field and the community that it celebrates, economic generator, parking for all residents, and we are definitely meeting code for parking. And then this would actually be approximately 12,000 square feet of retail space that would help generate jobs and sales tax. And really, we're looking at community-based retail, not necessarily more restaurants, but really something that retail spaces that can generate community interest and really give back to the community. And then designed to reinforce the historic mining culture and an extension of Minor Street and that neighborhood fabric were all very important benefits that, in discussing with the community. Also in those meetings, who are we intending to house? First and foremost, teachers and school staff. This is a partnership with the school district. We want to make sure that is one area that we are addressing. And then in the documents, you'll see on page 1 that we're actually writing into the PD that workers within Idaho Springs are given a first right of refusal there, so that it addresses workers in Idaho Springs as well as the county to come forth. So and be housed first. And then some things to consider while you're thinking through your approval. The site distinguishing characteristics, grade is number 1 here. It's a little hard to believe, but you can see our survey is overlaid on our CAD drawings here. Minor Street is approximately at worst 18 feet lower or above ground of the field itself. So we have 18 feet of elevation to make up there. And then from this point on, so this is a section through Minor Street, along Minor Street, and then as it goes back, so Idaho Street is actually 10 feet below Minor Street even. So all of these buildings sit at a sort of a stair step kind of edge. Really wanting to create that edge along Minor and that continuation of Minor Street. What is the residential context? We want to keep that residential context. We don't want buildings that are massive. So you can see in these plans that this shaded gray area is what would be allowed by code. So if somebody wanted to come in here without a pitched roof, then they could build up to that point. What is being proposed by the applicant going forth would be more of a most likely a pitched scenario here that would allow this building frontage to appear more. It's a 2-story at front and then it would pull back under the zoning that is being requested tonight. And then it's adjacency to the rec center. You know, we really want to make sure that we're being good partners and working with the rec center to make this a fully functioning area, and help their operations and help also have our residents have a partnership with that space. So building height. So this is the Minor Street zone lot lines. You'll see this on your plans that you have in your packet. So this is proposed to restrict how high those buildings can be. And this is really to address that grade. So that Minor Street zone lot line allows the back of the building to sort of match the front of the building, but step down in grade back there without allowing somebody to come in and just put a larger building up right on Minor Street. So in the PD, no structure in area 1, that's this area to the left. That's the line. You'll see that in your packet. No more than 2 stories and 35 feet high. Minor Street zone lot line as outlined in this PD, and no structure in area 1 shall be more than 4 stories and 46 feet on the south of the Minor Street zone lot line. So 46 feet on the back and 35 feet on the front. Of course, if we look at that pitched roof there, we're actually proposing that the pitched roof would allow us to feel more residential across here. Although the zoning would allow for 35 feet, more similar to what you have at historic Minor Street, on historic Minor Street today. And then in zone south of Minor Street, no structure in area 2. So that would be from this line over, that's essentially the 11th Street right away, to the east shall be no more than 35 feet high. Now, building coverage that is written in the PD is only 10%. So this would allow for a very small juice bar or a very small, I don't know, anything that's allowed within there, but the restrictions on uses are very tight there. So there's only a few things that really could fit within there, and that's not intended to be used at the moment, but it would allow for somebody to come in here and say, okay, 10% of that could be some sort of structure that facilitates that park space. And then just to give you a better understanding of what you're looking at here. So again, Minor Street is approximately 18 feet, worst case scenario, above the field proper. So this is the field today. And then we've got the grandstands that go up. And so this 35 feet along Minor and the 46 feet on the backside, which would allow us to really stay within that zone. And the building height line, because of the change in grade, planning and the applicant went back and forth, and we're really trying to figure out the best way to identify what grade is and to keep it as simple as possible. So what we said is that grade is determined by the median of the frontage, the project frontage along Minor Street, essentially. So it sort of takes that line and creates your 35 feet from that side, 46 feet from that side. And then one thing I should note, so then there is this sort of step back right along building through building number 1. There's sort of this step back at the central alley along Idaho Street there, which would step this back along the backside or along the I-70 side. So I'm hoping that makes sense. Talk about Minor Street here, the building height along Minor Street. So again, sort of comparing against historic Minor Street. That's what this 35-foot line here would be. We're proposing that because it's in a residential area that it have more of a pitched roof of some sort. and reduce that sort of frontage so that it would sort of sit a little bit lower, but only be 2 stories. So these are quick views of what that kind of looks like against buildings. And so these are sort of the existing houses. They don't have the pitched roof, but these are the existing massing of the existing houses along Minor Street today. And this would be that 35-foot max. So this is looking east towards downtown, historic downtown. And then this is looking west along that street. This would be the rec center in the foreground here. So you can see it's very comparable to that massing of the rec center is today. And so you can see where we're widening the street here. It really provides a lot of that breadth between the existing and the new. This is along Idaho Street. So Idaho Street is actually sitting, I say it's along Idaho Street, but this is actually Idaho Street, and then it continues into the central alley. So this is looking, the rec center would actually sit in section right along here. And so this is looking west. So the park space that we're talking about would sit in front of this building. And so we're proposing 46 feet there. And you can see again, here's that Minor Street elevation, that average Minor Street elevation. And you can see Idaho Street actually sits approximately 10 feet lower than that Minor Street. So this building on the south side or along I-70 here, I-70 here, Idaho Street here, that building actually sits a little bit lower. And then again, these are the sort of distinguishing areas of the pink line tells you kind of what we'd be allowed to build in, what we're being proposed there. And so along Minor Street, so this is Minor Street, this is the house across the street. There's a 3-story house that sort of steps back along Minor Street there. It's the largest house on the block. And then you can see how we actually compare to it. Those houses on the north side of Minor sit approximately 5 to 6 feet higher than the average Minor Street as well. So these already sit a little bit higher. And then you'll see we have sort of that setback. There's the Minor Street zone lot line, which would then allow us to step up. And this allows us to get just a few more units to meet our pro forma on the backside there. Again, this is 50% buildable. So anything within this zone is really 50% buildable that you're looking at in any of these shaded areas. So to talk a little bit about the design standards and principles, we'll touch on these rather quickly because Jared did go through this. So, you know, we're really aiming towards the mining heritage and the Victorian industrial style. We're thinking of using like a hand scraped siding look, corrugated rusted steel, something that massing would be utilitarian and characteristic to house the function, and then really a straightforward structure, nothing terribly ornate or you know, something that fits within that mining culture, mining aesthetic. To make it really street friendly, though, you know, we agree that we need at least 20% of transparency and architectural detailing. So we would do this through awnings, windows, doors, flower boxes, lighting, etc. Maximum building, we've talked about this, would not exceed 210 feet. This is allow us to get that massing in there, but also allow for the breadth between the buildings. And then architectural articulation. So we would, even though the buildings in structure would be utilitarian and sort of that straightforward structure, we would still have recesses and projections and shadow lines every 50 feet to accommodate and to really bring aesthetic to it, residential aesthetic to it. What will the buildings look like? What will it feel like and what will it look like? You know, the main intent here is to to design it to be part of the fabric of the neighborhood. It will bring traffic, but you'll see in our traffic study, the impact is minimal. And it will provide park and recreation space. It will block the highway view, but it will also block the noise, which has been addressed in our community meetings. We had a number of people talk about how it will block the noise and how that's a benefit. It will identify the historic mining characteristic and Victorian culture of the town. It will be seen prominently in 90, so we definitely want to make sure that this fits within our culture, but within but also is something we can be proud of from a community standpoint. And the open space by the rec center will be part of the gateway to our city, as it's identified in the community in the comprehensive plan. That exit 240 is intended to be sort of the gateway to our city. And so we want that open space to shine. So these are sort of precedent images that, you know, we've looked at, not necessarily anything in particular, but and how it could translate to sort of sketches of what could happen here. So these are really more intended to give you a feel for what the scale feels like against the edge here. And then also what that breadth between the buildings could be. So this would be sort of a hearkening back to the grandstands that are there today, but it can act as a recreational space. We would be adding sidewalks on both sides of the right of way and widening that street so that we have parallel parking all the way through the north side, as well as all along the south side, and 2 lanes of traffic on the Minor Street side. There'd be space for bicycles and dogs throughout the property. See some of the detailing we're looking at. In one of the community meetings, we were asked to show, you know, sort of a view from that porch across the way. And again, it's a little deceiving because we are actually 5 feet higher than the average height along Minor Street. And then of course you're 5 feet or more, depending on your height. So you would be sort of overlooking these cars a little bit, and you'll see the buildings. You'd still get a glimpse of those mountains across a little bit. And then that breadth between the buildings is really intended to allow for light and air there as well. So you can see that view, whether it's in axometric here or in a sketch form, is really taken from sort of that house that sits sort of third from the east. And then the typical right-of-way section, we did talk to the city engineer, and they were amenable to us continuing that right-of-way as it is today. So east of 10th Avenue, we were looking at approximately 36 feet curb face to curb face. And then we would continue that down to the west side through the frontage of the project. And then the open space requirements, as Jared had talked about, you know, we've got 8% that would be dedicated, or that would be, conveyed back to the city, dedicated as right away, 10% for subdivision, and another 15% is what he'd like to see for open space, pervious open space throughout the project. So the park space itself, these are sort of initial conversations we've had. Really, we're thinking that in stakeholder conversations that everyone wants to see this more as much green as possible. So this could be green, but we could use it as, you know, we could set up some sort of bocce courts that are movable, or work with the rec center to do sort of multi-use programming there, possibly do some sort of climbing element, that bouldering climbing element there, as well as possibly a ropes course. And this was a suggestion from the rec center. And then, you know, wouldn't it be great to see maybe some festoon lighting somewhere in the area so that it could be used at night for with park benches or for nighttime activities as well. So there's sort of different ideas. This is a rendering that was created for that. So you see the rec center on the right-hand side here, looking towards our building number 3 here. So the rec center would work with us to do programming for yoga space and rentals of the slack lines and the ropes courses there. What you're seeing in the back here is a pedestrian bridge that has been sort of indicated that CDOT may be interested in providing down the line there. And you can see the addition of the sidewalk and parking all along that face. So that will add some parking use to the rec center, as well as any retail space that we have in this building number 3 at the lower level, at the ground level there. So sort of and you'll see this chart in the documents as well. So the total gross amended site area is 144 square feet, 1,000 square feet. We are required to provide 11,525 of dedicated right-of-way. We're proposing 16,000 of that be dedicated right-of-way to give the widths that are appropriate and desired. For the subdivision, the open space would be required a little over 14,000. We're proposing 18,000. And then the open space, which we're proposing be designed, constructed, and operated by the developer. We're required to provide 21,000, and we are proposing 21, just slightly over 21,000. So we are proposing, and some of these overages are being used in that final calculation down there, but we are meeting the open space requirements. Residential market analysis per the THK study that was done in October of 2016. That's where we're coming up with sort of that idea of how many rental units are required and needed in this area. So rental units under 1,200 per month will make up 36% of the rental demand, while 64% would rent above that. And so this is that 64% that THK studies talks about is really that sweet spot of what middle income market rate housing would be for us in Idaho Springs. The economic impact, there will be impacts to the view shed, but property values may not increase based on that, but we do expect them to increase on the fact that the noise, that the highway noise is blocked, and that the sidewalks are being increased and that the streets are more appropriate. Affordable housing adjacent to the R1 is middle income housing would likely increase those property values. And then this is a community-centric commercial space, and the addition of the park would impact those property values likely as well. Parking requirements. So yeah, I'm not going to go through too deep into this, but we are required to provide 200 spaces, and we are providing at least that 200 spaces, and we're looking for more spaces as we go. And then the traffic impact. So our traffic impact study does, in the conclusion, you'll see that this project is not anticipated to significantly impact, to have significant impacts on the study area. The one area that is noted is 13th and Idaho Street, which I think we all know is a little bit of an issue today, and it actually calculates out to issues at peak times currently. So, the recommendation is for improvements along 13th and Idaho if Minor Street remains closed as it does today. And then the pedestrian improvements should be made to 13th and Idaho regardless of the Minor Street being closed. So again, in our eyes, this is a zoning question, and we do not believe that that the traffic is impacted in this area, we do know that there are going to have to be some adjustments and some modifications made to make that 13th and Idaho a better scenario. And then plan development considerations, Jared went through these. Traffic is, in our eyes, traffic is a minimal impact. The view corridors, new structures will impact those. The noise will be minimized. Property values will likely be better, and provision of public service. The referrals were sent out, and so I think you have all of that information. And I think I'm going to stop there.
Okay, thank you, Carla. So does the applicant have any other things they want to address? Presentations? That was it?
That was it for us. Yeah, we're here to answer questions. One thing, Cindy, I want to note that our traffic engineer is online, Craig McPhee. I think he's still there. Yep, there he is. And so he is here to answer any questions that you have. He's got a time constraint, so we hope that we can address the traffic questions a little bit earlier than maybe some of the other questions if possible.
Okay, I guess my thought is if he's got a presentation, if not, we can hold off for questions. Okay, then now let's go to public comment, and I'll let Jonathan and Jared do that since we're zooming people in for the public comments.
All right, thank you very much, Chair. First person who signed up for public comment was Cameron Marlin. So John, if you could promote Cameron.
She's on her way in.
Thank you.
Who's there?
Hello.
We can hear you, Cameron.
Okay, can I go ahead and proceed?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you guys all so much, and good evening to you all.
Can I have you stop 1 minute? I think she has to state her name for the record and address, right, Diane?
Yes. Happy to do so. My name is Cameron Marlin. My address is 269 Zip Trail, and that's in Idaho Springs, Colorado, 80452.
Thanks.
Absolutely. So I am the general manager of CCMRD, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all tonight. I'm here to express my support for the effort to change the zoning of the Diggerfield property to residential and the Bus Barn property to park space. I believe that the change in zoning and the 4 Points plan development will bring significant benefit to the Idaho Springs community and to CCMRD as well. Specifically, through the partnership with 4 Points and ongoing conversations, I believe that green space adjacent to our rec center facility would provide CCMRD with additional outdoor resources that we could leverage for recreational purposes, which ultimately benefits the entire community via quality of life and enhanced health and wellness. 2, I also believe that adjacent green space would be regularly utilized by our childcare program, as our younger community members would be able to run, play, and flourish in an outdoor space that is safe and easily accessible. 3, I believe that the overall aesthetics of our space and that of one of the major entry points to our city would be enhanced by park space via a celebration of one of the things that we all value and that we can all agree about, which is the love of the outdoors. 4, I believe that an expansion of housing availability would provide direct benefit to CCMRD as well. More residents would correlate to an increase in property taxes and an increase in the number of potential CCMRD members. More families living in Clear Creek County also means more kids to fill out our youth sport teams and more young people to potentially fall in love with sports at a young age. More families translate into more opportunities for high quality recreational programming. 5, I believe that more housing will also help to ease the pressures of the labor shortage that every business in Clear Creek County is currently facing, including us at CCMRD. Our local leaders, such as yourselves, are faced with difficult decisions as we navigate the challenges of housing, parking, tax revenue, and a rapidly changing social landscape. The development proposed by 4 Points Funding presents answers to these issues and opportunities that could offer game-changing outcomes. I'd like to add that as an Idaho Springs native, I personally have deep emotional connections with Digger Field, and it would be remiss to not speak to the undeniable nostalgia. I am also deeply committed to this community, and I think the benefits outweigh the drawbacks. Thank you for your sincere consideration of this development and the requisite rezoning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next person who signed up for public comment in advance is Mr. Ross Breyer, and I believe he is in the waiting room as well. Mr. Breyer, I believe you've been promoted into the Zoom meeting. The floor is yours. You have 3 minutes, I believe, just
Can you hear us?
our standard time frame.
Perfect. I think we just figured out the mute. So this is Ross Breyer and Jenna Billig. We just purchased the house at 904 Minor, so right on the corner of 9th and Minor Street. As it stands now, we have been living in town, renting for quite some time in the downtown area. And I do fully understand the need for more housing for our employees because that has become a big challenge. Few of the current concerns I have regarding it is mainly the parking situation. We're proposing 120 units, but 200 parking spaces. One of the things that had us move out of the downtown area was the fact that just getting groceries into our apartment was a disaster. Trying to find street parking, residential parking, and then lugging groceries a block down the road. We really liked the quietness that this home provided. And I also am a night shift nurse. So I come home at 5 in the morning, I leave at 4 a.m. Being able to walk around the street in the dark at night and feel safe and not have to walk a block or two to my car was very helpful. So concerns over not being able to find parking after purchasing a home is a little concerning on the topic. The other thing would be, I know we're going to make priority for Clear Creek County residents, but how do we prevent, and I don't want to use prevent as a strong word, but people from the Denver area who are seeing this as a, we're calling it middle income, but it really does promote more towards a lower income. And how do we prevent some of that riffraff that could come with that? Again, sleeping through the day, I was trying to move to a quieter part of town where it wasn't a concern as to people up late at night, yelling, riffraff on the streets, that kind of thing. And I know most of our residents who work in town would not be the major issue for that. And Ross, anything to add?
I guess we were concerned a little bit about how much space was coming in on this kind of one-way part of the street right now. And you did mention that there would be 36 feet in between. But I guess we're just wondering how much imposition this building was going to be on our side of the street as well.
Yeah, I think the initial conversation of the 3-foot setback is a little close. And I know we are one of the homes that sits back the farthest. I really liked the idea of the 5-foot setback, even though I know that does become more challenging. And I know we are just about out of time, so I appreciate everyone's time and thank you for bringing this up, as I do think it is necessary.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much. Both of them were signed up for public speaking, so now I'm going to move to Ann Bowler, and I believe it might be Annie's computer on the attendees.
And can we ever state her name and address for the record?
Yes, thank you.
It looks like you've been promoted, Annie's computer, and you have the floor.
She's muted. There you go.
Oh, there we go.
Am I in?
Yes, can you state your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, I'm Annie Bowler. I live at 1120 Minor Street, Idaho Springs, Colorado, 80452. As a hospice nurse, my patients sought peace of mind and comfort. Their greatest peace of mind was in knowing that their children, families, and those they may never ever meet would be happy and safe, that they would discover a quality of life that perhaps they knew once too. But their biggest concern was often safety. And that's my concern with this new plan. I understand change and I accept that we have to accept it too. But I believe you've run into a few real serious issues. In reading your comprehensive plan, it says that you plan that this developments minimize impacts and respect existing single family neighborhoods. And in that comprehensive plan, I think that would include saying, bringing about immense safety. And I think you're really risking it because you're adding about as many as if their average family is 4 people and you keep talking middle class here, it's probably 2 cars. So I agree with the woman who spoke before me. We need far more parking. Do they get to use the current residential parking? Can we use the parking they're allotted? That type of thing could occur. But the main concern I had was you have children and families going back and forth to school. You're bringing in shoppers to that area. Where are they going to park? Then you also have people with needs for cars to go see our beautiful environment in the mountains, et cetera. And I think what happens is at this 13th Street in Idaho, 13th Avenue and Idaho Street, I read the Stolfus study and they think it's risky and how you're maybe putting the city of Idaho Springs into risk. And lots of, obviously you read the Stolfus traffic study, but I think bringing those people, no matter what happens to Minor Street, bringing that many people that come and go and visit and family and babysitters and all that other good stuff, coming up to right at the ramp exit up here behind the rec center is dangerous at what you have now. So I would really watch danger for children and families, residents, visitors. And then also, one other concern I have is it sounds like you had allotted 18% for public use, then you changed it to 12. 18 is only 3/4 of an acre. If you're adding about 400 plus people to this community of about 2,000, you really think that's a gift? So what I think my hospice patients would have said is quality of life, peace of mind is more space for everybody to commune together in our community to grow, not argue over parking, and not everybody can afford the rec center, obviously. And then also, I just think that to bring that quality of life, which is in your comprehensive plan, and minimize impact, you need to increase the parking somehow, reduce the amount of units, and open up more space. 3/4 of an acre is not enough. And I don't know if any of you live really close in this area, but if you did, you might see that impact on our community well-being inevitably if you don't look towards tomorrow for the people that will live in it under these circumstances. So that's kind of my big fear is safety. You're bringing in some really unsafe conditions for the immense amount of traffic you're bringing in. And also, once again, my question was, can we use their parking? Can they use what we're now allotted for us? Will they get the residential perks also? But the main thing is safety. And I think that's your number one goal is safety. So I didn't hear the word come up a lot, but I don't think what you stated was safe. So thank you for what you're doing, but put the kids and families walking around first, because there's a lot of walking you're talking about and a lot of people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next person for public comment was a Mark Bowler as well. Is Mark there as well?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Then I would turn it over to the commission for any questions, comments that they would have.
Okay, I had a few questions. I'll start off. I guess listening to the setback requirement, the 3 foot to 5 foot, is one of the main things that noticed right away that I'd like to see as one of the conditions and come to some type of agreement. I think I was understanding that usually they should be 10 feet in setbacks. So to me, a good compromise would be the 5 feet compared to the 3 feet. And then my question that would go along with that, will we have parking in front of that? So would it be 3 feet sidewalk and then pull-in parking or parallel parking?
It is currently proposed to be parallel parking in that
Okay.
location.
Okay. And then the sidewalk, the standard side sidewalk between the parking and
Yes.
would be the grass area, the 5 feet or the 3 feet? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Another question I had was the xeroscaping. I don't know if Carla or Stephanie wants to answer that one. What type of xeroscaping? Is it just going to be like any greenery? Let's put it that way.
Yeah, so the xeroscaping is not currently in the regulations, and that xeroscaping is one thing that actually came up in our community meetings. There was a community member, at least at one of the meetings, that had sort of voiced concern about adding too much greenscape because of the water situation in Colorado. And so, at final development plan, we would have full landscape plans, and that would better show you what is intended to be green and what is intended to be xeroscape. I think adding that to the regulations just allowed us to say, yes, we would definitely consider xeroscaping to offset sort of water usage. The intent is not to put all xeroscaping in lieu of green space by any means. And the park itself is intended at the moment to be green space. So if you want conditions that sort of talk to that, I think that is definitely amenable.
Okay. I don't know if that needs to be a condition more than, I know it's something you address in the final plat and stuff like that. Does somebody else have any questions while I'm looking here? Any of the commissioners, any questions?
I'm good.
Tracy's got her hand up.
I guess the other concern is this report that came today, which I do understand this is part of the rezoning. So if it was to continue the meeting instead of making the decision tonight where that can be addressed, and I guess maybe this is a good question for Joe and Jared, or can close out the meeting, make the motion, whichever way it goes, and then does it give you guys enough time to address the issues that was in that traffic report and be able to come to a compromise? Does just rezoning it change the whole dynamic of everything? Where's Joe? Does that make sense?
So if Joe wants to chime in first, then I can follow him. You're on mute.
I think that's a question for best addressed by Jared initially, at least.
Okay.
Yeah. So the commission absolutely has the decision-making power as to what to recommend. They can certainly recommend approval, denial, or continuation. Yeah, in staff's opinion, we felt that more information regarding that review of the traffic study was needed. Now that more information we can either work out through a continuation, or we could still work with the petitioner if a recommendation was made in the affirmative or the negative, but with a condition that would state something to the effect of the traffic items that were brought up in the traffic engineer's review letter be addressed. So it's the commission has a lot of options. That was staff's recommendation, but you can certainly make a recommendation this evening if you so choose.
Okay. Carla?
I just wanted to address some of Ann's comments on that traffic, regarding that traffic report. And I think Craig is here as well to kind of address some of that traffic information as well. And I think it's important because I agree with Ms. Boland that it is important to make sure that that there's safety involved in our pedestrians that are around that 13th Avenue piece. I think what's important to note is that what the Stolfus assessment doesn't, in my opinion, address is that the existing condition is what's dangerous today, and that the impact that our traffic has on the site is minimal. And yes, there are a number of cars coming in there, but we currently have a number of buses and cars and pedestrians because of the bus facility, maintenance facility there today. So there's an offset to that as well. And I think personally and professionally, I think that there are, I agree with the Stolfus account that there's some adjustments that need to be made there. But what I believe is that we're showing that the impact through our numbers is minimal, and that we recognize, as the applicant recognizes, that we'll need to work with the city to make that intersection safe for traffic as well as pedestrians. It's in the best interest of everyone to do that, and this project will help. There'll be some funds to offset that, making of that intersection safer, as the conditions are dangerous currently.
Can I
Have
add a
something
little
to
bit
add
to
to
that?
that?
Yeah. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm Craig McPhee, I'm with Subtrans Engineering. I performed the traffic impact study for the applicant for this development, and then Stolfus was the review engineer hired by the city. So the traffic study was completed within city standards and based on standard traffic engineering practices. It does identify the intersections on 13th at Idaho Street and at Minor Street experiencing high amounts of pedestrian traffic currently, and that would continue regardless of whether this project moves forward or not. In my professional opinion, it is an area that should be addressed by the city and possibly CDOT if it ends up being within their impact area that they have some oversight on. So this project's traffic generation is not substantial enough to the point where it degrades those intersections to unacceptable levels. So from a capacity standpoint, it just doesn't trigger the need for improvements. The improvements right now that in my opinion are needed are more related to pedestrian safety, specifically at the Idaho Street and 13th Avenue intersection. That there's no control there right now for people crossing 13th Avenue. There's a little bit of there's a little bit of uncertainty with this traffic study too, because we, you know, as everyone knows, Minor Street through downtown is closed to vehicle traffic right now. So when we went out and did the traffic counts, it was during this current configuration. We don't know what the permanency is of that. It obviously is currently affecting traffic circulation, so more people are likely to try to get onto 13th from Idaho Street than Minor Street right now, just because of that closure through downtown. And Stolfus also, it's brought up in the traffic study that I completed, but Stolfus also mentions that. So I agree with Stolfus's review. I think that we can continue to work together on evaluating this corridor and offering some solutions. But I also believe that's more likely a improvements that the city is going to need to find some funds for and try to address, regardless of whether this project moves forward or not.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any other questions, comments?
I do.
Go ahead, Tracy.
I would like to speak to Ann's comments about the type of person that might be attracted to these units. And I just wanted to say that based on past performance of some of the multifamily developments in the area, one I'm thinking of in particular, which I won't name, but I'm understanding there's offsite management there. And when the correct management for a structure like this isn't provided, it could potentially create safety problems for the community. But one of the reasons I was very much in support when I was on council of the Riverbend project is I did note that there was on-site management. And I felt like it was the first development that had been brought to our area that had a plan for moving forward and trying to bring quality individuals to the neighborhood, to the community, as well as providing safe, affordable housing for them. And I understand all of the concerns because we did hear them back then, but I feel like we can't ignore the almost unprecedented amount of studies that have been done in previous years indicating we do need more of this kind of housing. And I was really hoping over time we would see it because I think it's a great benefit for so many types of workers in our community that are the support staff that make our engines go, that support our existing economy. And I just wanted to state that we're very aware that there are safety concerns and issues, but I feel like in these new developments, they'll be properly addressed and we'll create a safe environment, add a safe environment to a thriving, growing community. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy. Questions?
Thank you. So Jared, I agree with most of your recommendations and agree that the traffic is the thing that we'll have to figure out. Will be the hardest to figure out to make it safe in that area. I walk my dog every single day on that intersection, so I know it is kind of crazy. But I have a question related to area 2. On the recommendation, you say the staff recommends not allowing permanent, sorry, not that one. Okay. The park in area 2 must operate similarly to any other public park found within the city. And I just wanted to check, because I think the ideas that they have for what that park could be in relation to the interaction and collaboration with CCMRD could be very interesting. So I just wanted to hear from you about what you're thinking, if what they were thinking, that what the ideas I have presented so far, if they match what you or what the other parks do. Was that clear?
I believe so. You're asking that of staff. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes. So there were a number of items that were brought up as potential uses for the site that staff doesn't necessarily mind, but also wants the petitioner to have to go through kind of the same process as anybody else. So for instance, the pop-up kiosk booths, food trucks, things of that nature. Once again, staff is not opposed to that. I don't think the city is necessarily either, because they already have processes in place to get permits on a temporary basis to have those items. So we're just recommending in that regard that that the petitioner have to go through our processes and get our get the city's permits. The other item in regards to that too is, yeah, it was a little broad. We also want to make sure that any other entity that needed to get a permit, or that you need to get a permit from, was still contemplated. We didn't want to give the impression that we were doing an end around, say, the health department on a food truck or something of that nature. So we kind of wanted to make sure that those requirements were still there. And we also really focused on this being utilized as a public park. So similar to, say, Courtney Riley Cooper, where you can go to that park and enjoy it as green space, etc., or you can bring some item of recreational material there. And I think that is something that the petitioners probably worked with the rec district in regards to, but we wanted to make sure that it was a place for everyone, and it wasn't so much a commercial enterprise.
Okay, thank you. I think I understand what you were going with that now. Thank you very much.
Well,
Any more questions? So I guess the next question is, do we feel that we want to continue to let them look at this traffic report, or move forward with the approval or denial of the rezoning? And keep in mind that you can set forth the conditions, and the traffic report can be part of the conditions that can be added. Just that has to be studied and looked at before it moves on to the next step.
Cindy, I have one question. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, there's going to be an ice issue on Weiner Street, similar to the ice by the rec center and the ice downtown in the wintertime. So the city will have to come up with a plan to remove the ice, when wintertime is here. So I don't know if anybody, considered that.
Does anyone have a comment on that?
You all deal with ice, so what's new?
Cindy, if you don't mind, I'll step in for a moment.
Okay.
For various reasons, I'm not allowed, or maybe not allowed is not the word, but it's not appropriate for me to speak at this meeting. I will say that I think we've got off the rails a little bit on what this meeting is about. It's a rezoning issue. It's not a re-presentation of the entire project. So I moved to approve us to move this forward for another consideration for another evening, especially with the traffic study as it just arrived on our desks today. So I'm making a motion to continue this meeting without any decision tonight.
Okay, I guess we need a second.
I'll second it.
Okay, then discussion. I think one of your comments you made, Kate, was that this is to address just the rezoning.
Correct.
I guess my thought on it is we could do the rezoning with the conditions and add the traffic concerns to that condition, which means it doesn't move forward and then it has to go to council. Those conditions would still have to be met. And it doesn't come back to us then a month from now, because the next meeting then would be October 6th.
Right.
And I guess I look at what works best for staff, being that Jared and staff is the one that has to address the traffic issues. And that's the comment I would make on that.
I would agree with you, Cindy. We go ahead and move it.
Okay.
Did you say vote?
That's, yeah, I was going to say we have to, so we have a motion on the floor that Kate wants to continue this to October 6th. So I would say let's do roll call.
Kate Collier,
Yes.
Cindy Olsen,
No.
Chuck Howard,
No.
Don Reimer,
Yes.
Ursula Cruzaligi,
No.
Tracy Stokes.
No.
Okay, so the motion fails. So now I'll entertain a motion to either recommend the zoning to the PD or deny the zoning change with the conditions. I believe they're in your packet on page 12. And adding the traffic study. I don't know how you would want to word that.
Initiative?
Just where all the issues, yeah, that's what I keep saying is traffic issues.
Cindy, just to reiterate what I've already said is I cannot vote on this issue tonight, just so everybody knows that I'm not doing this to be
right,
taking away from the project. For whatever reason, I will have to recuse myself for this evening.
Okay. Diane, you've got that for the record. Okay, do we have a motion on the rezoning?
Jared, do you want to say something?
If I may, I was just going to state that the conditions that staff recommended, with the exception of the traffic item, are in the packet on page, apologize, on page 12 of the staff report. If you do want to utilize staff's recommended conditions with the additional one of the addressing the traffic study.
Do we have a motion? Hello?
Chuck is looking for it.
Go ahead, Ursula.
Okay. I recommend the approval of the proposed plan development, rezoning and preliminary plat and plan for the mixed-use development at blocks 57, former Gold Digger Field, to include the following conditions. You'll have to read them all.
You can just say the conditions in the staff report.
Okay, based on the conditions on the staff report, and to include further development of parking and traffic plan. Is that okay?
Addressing the traffic study.
You guys are happy with that?
Very.
Is that okay, addressing the traffic study?
Yes.
Ursula?
Yes, I will second that.
Okay, discussion? Roll call?
Cindy Olsen,
Yes.
Kate Collier, Howard,
Kate's abstaining.
what?
Kate's going to abstain from voting.
Right, Chuck Howard,
Yes.
Don Reimer,
Yes.
Ursula Cruzaligi,
Yes.
and Tracy Stokes.
Yes. Hey, the motion carries. Congratulations, you guys.
Thank you so much. We know we have work to do in front of us, and we really appreciate the discussion.
Yeah. And continue to
very
work
much.
with Jared on this traffic.
Absolutely.
100%.
Okay, with that.
Thank
we will
you, everyone.
close- Okay, at this point, we close the public hearing and we will close the meeting for September 1st, 2021. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night.
Have a good evening.
Good.